Welcome to Your Bit Solutions. This video is a part of the series regarding managing your finances using Excel. In the last video, we went through the fundamentals of what the T account is, their elementary definition into a debit type of account and a credit type of account. Then we went further into the classification of these accounts into the accounting equation, the asset accounts, which are all debit accounts, the liabilities account, which are all credit accounts, and then the owner's equity accounts that are credit accounts, except those accounts that negatively affect the equity, which would be the debit accounts as well. If you need to see more information before going further into this video, check out the link on the top of your window or into the description below. In this particular video, we will start modeling this concept into an Excel. Let us switch over to Excel. These are the fundamental types that we just discussed in the previous slide. I also put some headers here where we will start building our own T accounts for the business. The columns names are self-explanatory. Let's go over some validation rule that we want to apply to these columns. The ID one under the data tab, data validation, let's make sure that it's a whole number between 1 to 10,000. On the base side, let's again go back to the data validation. Let's make sure it's a list, which means that any value in this cell must belong to these four accounts, these four names. And next step here is let's convert this to an Excel table. The shortcut is Control T. Once you do that, the header table comes up and we already have headers defined. Just say OK. And let's go and maybe change the formatting type to outside green boundary so we know how our table grows. Let's turn off the filter and also the branded rows. That will convert this our T accounts into a table. Now, why would you want to use table? I put a video just to go in details the benefits that we want to keep control of total number of accounts we should know anytime, and then also we want to extend these constraints that we just put as to the bottom rows as the accounts grow. Check out the link above or in the descriptions to go through a very detailed video on why we should be always using Excel table for these kind of transactions. Okay, let us set up some basic accounts. On the base side, these account bank is an asset, the credit card is a liability, and the income is an equity account. On the debit, let's pull up these the signs of the debit side using this base number using the formula so that there's less possibility of an error. That would be X lookup. What are we looking for? We're looking for the base number in this array, so that base number has to be one of that entry, and we press F4 to go to absolute array, and then if you find it, give me the corresponding number from the debit array. Again, press F4 for the absolute reference. Once you do that, all of them are done. On the credit side is nothing but the negative of the debit side, and that is done as well. So while that sets up our basic setup, one thing I do want to add here would be to make sure the IDs are unique and then so are the name. So let's use the if formula. If count number of entries in this column, and that is equal to count, but put a unique filter in front of it, but use the same column again. And if the count is same as the unique count, then put in true, otherwise type in duplicate. Close bracket. Now let's copy the same formula onto the adjacent column, and this time we need to make a one small change, that instead of count, this has to be count A, because count A count the text entries versus the count function only count the number entries. And that way, if we go and try to put a duplicate number in here, it tells you a good helpful error. So let's do some custom formatting on the display for these numbers. All you gotta do is go to the custom category, and at the very last I created one special that if it's a positive number, put a positive sign on it. If it's a negative number, put a red in color. Once you do this, and it sets up some more visual indication, and we can also go further and change it to another color. Let's switch over to the T accounts, where we will set up the layout of our T accounts. Now in this particular sheet, we will be using these formulas very extensively, the sequence, lambda, and mapping of an array to help with the dynamic creation of our layout. And if you're comfortable with them, that is great. If you're not, check the link on the top and the description below, where we made a video to go over some introductory level details about these functions, so you are comfortable building along. So going back to the Excel, here to start up, let's get an associative copy of all the IDs that we've been using here. And let's make it horizontal by transpose function. Okay, and with the transpose, now we want to use a sequence to create some spacing between these IDs so you can set up the layout. For that, we would use a sequence of one row, and number of columns are the count of this array times the spacing in the setting here. So it's 12, 3 times 3 would be the 9 column spacing, and that would be the count of our this array multiplied by the spacing. And we want the counter start from 0 with a step of 1. That will make it all the way from 0 to 8. So 9 entries are created here. So the goal of using sequence is that at between 0 we want 100 to be plotted here, 200 to be plotted here, and 300 to be plotted here. And that is our goal. We can do it by using mapping function, map the array on the top. And what is the lambda function that we would be using? It should say location, where if statement, if mod of location to this counter, so basically 0 divided by 3, 1 divided by 3, and so on and so forth. If this mod is equal to 0, then give us a division. That would be location divide by this number. Otherwise, don't do anything. Close the lambda, close the mapping. So that now we got 0, 1, and 2. Now what we can do is use the index functions to create, pick up this array and give us the first 0 plus 1. So first index, second index, and third index here. So let's go back here. So instead of giving a division number, we would just say give us index of this array and at that location. But remember, we have to put 1 in here because the Excel arrays are 1. The first element is 1, not 0. And that is what the goal was. Let's go back and change it to no fill. Let us fetch the debit column somewhere here, and maybe the name row of here that we would be plotting, and a bit of styling. Here we go. And we would be using the mapping function again, map this array now. And what is the lambda function? That is location. If location is a number, location, and then do x lookup location in which array? In our ID array on the design side. And if that is found, then give us the corresponding number from the debit column. And now we can close the logic if that is true. Otherwise, give us nothing. Close the lambda, close the mapping, close the final array. So we get the debit column, and we can just use the same exact column here, same function into the name side, but instead of the debit we can use the account. So now we know we're fetching up the account names, debits coming here, and now let's come plot here debit and credit column both. And for that we can use the if mapping function again. We pick this here, our debit array, and the lambda says now there will be two conditions. First condition is if look is number, if location is a number, then give us the number. So I will plot 1 for the debit side. Otherwise, put another if condition, that is if the column on the left hand side of the location, which means when location is here, if the column on the left is a number, then just put an inverse of that number here, which would be the credit column. The inverse means, sorry, the negative of that number. So that would be if is number, but this time it would be the offset function, offset of location in the same column, in the same row, but one column to the left, which would be -1. So if this is a number, okay, then give the negative of that number. That would be the negative of offset, the same thing here, location in the same row but the negative column. Let's close the offset, okay, and otherwise don't do anything. Close the if, close the second if, close the lambda, close the map. Let's see if it works. Okay, good. So that's working now. So let's apply some custom formatting on it. First thing we can do is just change the default color to green, which we will change momentarily. Other thing we want to do is we can, on the debit side, we can apply some custom formatting, add more rules, and we want to do a formula. And what the formula would be, if length, L-E-N, length of the cell right above it. Now remember, this time it cannot be absolute, so you have to press F4 a couple of times to make it E11 as shown in here. If this is greater than 0, then what do we want to do? We want to use a custom format. And in the custom, I've created this custom formatting where if a positive number and the negative both will be prefixed by a text debit. And if you do that, you press OK, you will see that this one now is converted to debit. Now you just have to copy this formula and apply it to the whole row. So now wherever you see the text on the top, it will convert this into debit. Now we do the same thing on this side and convert this to credit. Again, conditional formatting, add a new rule with under more rules based upon a formula. And same here is len is the length, start bracket, and this time it's one to the left and one on the top, because we're going to use a non-absolute function, so relative, so it's E11, don't have a $sign in there. If that is the case, we want to do a custom formatting, custom again, but this time we're going to pick the credit one. Once we do that, then that would be the credit. Now we select the cell, again format, and apply it to the whole row. Now it's working great. Now finally what we have to do is change the color to red, and for that we select the whole row, do one more conditional formatting, and this time we pick the equal to. If this is equal to -1, and you can just change a red text. Once the text is colored to red, now this is working, and it's just a better display. Remember, these are still numbers, not text, which means if you just do this +1, this should give you 2. So these are mathematically the numbers. Good, the formatting is done, and now let's do the sum formulas in here. From here, and we have a setting of n transactions to be 100. So what we want to do is sum of all those columns up in here, likewise sum of all these up in here, and then when you can do the net sum, and then your T accounts will be ready. So let's get the sum function done. Now in order for us to do the sum, because we need to know the address of each column dynamically, and address require two functions, the column and the row. Both the row is where the sum starts, and we want to keep it dynamic, so we will just call the row function itself, and the address will go here as a construction work. And what we can do is just do the mapping function, and this would be our array, and lambda function would be if is a number. If our location is a number, then we need the address of the row and column number. Row number is 13. Remember, these are numeric, not alphanumeric. This is the row, and the column's address would be calling the column function on the location itself. If that is the case, then we print the address, otherwise don't print anything, and we simply close our brackets. So now we get the address of the first time, but we need the full range, so it should be E13 separator semicolon, or and then the E113 in here in order to get that done. So what we can do is just copy this much portion, because we will have to paste it again, but we need to put a separator in the middle, which is separator, and then paste again, but with the one change that instead of a 13 at the end, it needs to be 13 plus 100, because 100 is the number of transactions we assumed. So all in here, all we're gonna do is we're gonna add with the plus C18, and we can convert this to F4 with the absolute reference, and that is what our range is. Now we need to do the sum here with using this range, but then we also have to multiply it by the sign, because remember, the net outcome of the T account is sum of all the entries into the positive column minus sum of all the entries into the negative column, and sometimes the positive column is the left, other time the positive column is the right. So what we need to do is do the sum and then multiply the result by this sign, and then we will add it up in here. Okay, so that purpose, because we need two arrays this time, so our mapping will require two arrays. One is our address array, and other one is our sign array. Remember, mapping can use many arrays, not necessarily only one. So this is, and let's call the lambda, and the two parameter, one parameter belongs to the first array, other parameter belongs to the second array. The first parameter is, let's call it, you can call anything, I'll call it ADR, would be the address, and the second column we can say sign, maybe SIGN as a shortcut. And then now the if statement, which would be if sign is a number, we can say is number sign, then what we need to do is do the sum of our address value, but this is a value, it needs to be converted into the range itself, and Excel provide the indirect functions to do that. So sum would be indirect, and value of the address ADDR, and close the indirect, close the sum, but then multiply by the sign. And that is our positive case. If it's not a number, don't do anything. And close lambda, close map. Okay, good. So now we can check if this is 100 and this is 20, and that would be the minus 20 in here. And likewise, if this is 100 here, it would be minus 100 there, and then 20 would be the positive. So that's the whole goal here. Okay, a couple of undo. So this is our sum, and now finally we have to add them up. And for that, our map function is again to the rescue. This time our array is this one below, and lambda is location, and with the if statement. Now what we need to do is when we are location here, we need the location plus the other number which is right next to the location in the same row. So we will need two AND conditions, because we only need to add it once, for which will take care of both of the columns. So we can put that in an AND condition, which means if the location is a number, not only this, the offset location to the right is also a number, so which would be offset in a location, but in the same row, which would be 0, but a column to the right is number 1, one column to the right. So if that is also a number, if both conditions are true, then we need to add both of the numbers, which would be location plus the offset. Offset of location with 0 row, same row, and 1 column to the right. So that is our success number. Otherwise, do not do anything. Now just close the bracket, close the bracket, close the bracket. So this would be our sum here. Now let's just put the entries in here, 100, 20, and the sum should be 80. So that does take care of our sum. Let's call it our sum, and then also change some styling, give it some sort of a calculation entry. So that takes care of all of our T account requirements. Let's hide some rows to make sure our construction rows are hidden and our T accounts are working. So that brings us to the end of this particular video segment. In the next video, we will extend this solution and implement the trial balance, which will help us to do some error checking and validate the inputs that we put as an example that you can practice on. And all the work that has been done in this video, that Excel file is available for you to download and practice at your own. The link for this file is in the description down below to this video. And last but not the least, once again, we humbly request that kindly consider liking and subscribing to this video channel, and it helps us greatly, and at the same time you will remain updated on whenever we upload the next segment into the series. Thanks again.